Welcome back, everyone. It's Eric from Rare Candy here today. We are back with yet again another Darkness Ablaze deck profile for the post-rotation format. And today we're going to be taking a look at the new Mad Party deck. It's sort of the next in line of the Night March, Lost March sort of gimmicky style decks that we have here. But one that I've been having a good bit of fun with, seeing how it's going to do in the new format. So also too, we are going to have a live match showing off this deck in action depending on when you watch this. There will be a link in the description to that if you guys do want to see how the Mad Party deck is going to function in an actual game. And also too, guys, just a quick plug, our stage 2 patrons are at patreon.com/rarecandytcg actually had early access to this list days before this video was even posted, so go check us out on there if you guys want some more early and exclusive Darkness Ablaze content as well. But let's get into it. So up first, we do have 4 copies of Sinistea. So of course, this is the pre-evolution to Polteageist. There are a couple different Sinesteas in format right now, but I'm opting to choose this one right now just because for our colorless energy, you get to put 2 damage counters, I think, on your opponent's active. I forget exactly right now, but the other one allows you and your opponent to draw cards. I think it's more important to get the extra damage in play just because this deck, I think one of the issues it kind of has compared to like Night March and Lost March of the past is that it's like just a little bit shy of taking some one shots sometimes. So getting some extra damage counters in play could be nice, but you know, most of the time, hopefully you never have to attack with poor little Sinistea here. But up next from there, one of the most important cards in the deck, we have 4 copies of the new Polteageist. So Polteageist here, it's the stage 1, 60 HP, so also quite weak as well, but has this attack Mad Party, which you'll see on all these different attackers. For 2 colorless energy, just 20 times the amount of Pokemon with the Mad Party attack in your discard pile. So, like I said, just like the old Night March attack, or kind of similar to the more recent Lost March mechanic as well. But of course, this is just for the Pokemon with the Mad Party attack. And then the ability is actually really nice as well. Once during your turn, you can discard a Pokemon with the Mad Party attack from your hand and draw 2 cards. So kind of like the Make Do ability that we have on Cincino, kind of like the Trade ability from Zoroark GX. You know, it is limited just to the Mad Party Pokemon, but nevertheless, that's still really cool, especially in a format without something like Battle Compressor that Night March had, and without something like Lost Blender or the Skip Bloom mechanic from the Lost March deck. This is another sort of nice way to help expedite this process here. So this is one of our primary attackers, but one of our other attackers in the deck is going to be Bunnelby. So we have 4 copies of this guy, just for this Mad Party attack, 20 for each Pokemon in the discard with Mad Party. There are some other Mad Party Pokemon we're going to look at, but the reason we're sort of focusing on these is because they have the most manageable attack costs. All of the other ones take 3 energy, which is a little bit less reliable to pull off. So these are going to be by and large our attackers in the deck. But we do still have some other Mad Partiers that we want to throw in the discard pile. So we have 4 copies of Galarian Mr. Rhyme. Now, nothing too special to go over about this. We're really just playing it to toss it into the discard pile. And for a similar reason, we do have 4 copies of the new Dedenne as well. Again, has the Mad Party attack. I mean, this one is a basic, so it's a little bit easier to use than the Mr. Rhyme, but again, takes 3 energy to attack with, which I think makes it, you know, a bit unplayable, to be honest. So, like I said, we're just trying to toss these away and attack with these guys. So that's really the core of the deck. But next up, we have one of the more interesting inclusions that I've sort of opted for in this list, and that's 4 copies of Weezing. So Weezing is kind of like our math fixer in the deck. So one of the things that is a little bit frustrating about Mad Party, especially compared to Night March, which easily one-shotted basically any deck in the format it was in, is that the Mad Party deck is, I think, sometimes a little bit shy of taking those big one-hit knockouts, especially on the VMAXs and tag teams, until maybe like the last turn or so of the game. So one way we can sort of increase our damage output is with Weezing. Has the ability, if it was discarded with Roxie, you can put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So no doubt we're going to want to use Roxie to sometimes discard our Mad Partiers, but also too we can use it to discard Weezing, get some more damage on the field, which is definitely really nice. So like I said, primarily to help us with our math, but going on from there, we actually have 1 copy of Mr. Mime in this deck as well. So Mr. Mime is a pretty important card just because everything in this deck has such low HP It's actually kind of frustrating. So in the case of Mr. Mime, it has the scoop up block ability. It's going to prevent damaged Pokemon on your opponent's field from getting picked up with scoop up style effects. So most notably, that's going to be to prevent them from picking up Zigzagoons. So if we're going against something like the new Eternatus VMAX, they can honestly just get plenty of cheap KOs just with Zigzagoons and scoop up nets, because Sinistea is 30 HP, Bunnelby is 40 HP. These Pokemon can easily be picked off. So Mr. Mime is one of our sort of tech cards, and really I think one of the only tech cards in the list actually to deal with that, just because we can discard the Weezings, spread damage, and then the Mr. Mime is going to prevent those Pokemon from being scooped up. So also nice against decks that play like a Jirachi engine in the post-rotation format with like the scoop up net switch engine. So up next from there, we have one copy of Dedenne GX. Pretty self-explanatory. For that Dead changeability, we can discard our hand, draw 6. So really nice at maybe discarding a bunch of Mad Partiers, you know, or if we whiff what we need for turn, we can Quick Ball for Dedenne, discard our hand, and keep on digging. Up next from there, though, we have one copy of Crobat V as well to round out our Pokemon line. So kind of for a similar reason as the Dedenne, it's a non-supporter based form of draw that we have in the deck. So much like the Dedenne, you can't use more than one of these abilities in a turn, but you can draw until you have 6. But it's kind of nice because if you play your Dedenne with what you need, you can still play a Crobat and keep on digging. So I think there is consideration of maybe switching the Dedenne to a second Crobat, but we don't play a whole lot of special energy, and there's no real special energy recovery in the format. So certain turns I found, you know, I really don't want to discard my hand because I might have a couple of twin energies in my hand and I need to save them. So going for a Crobat instead can sometimes be a little bit better. Up next from there, we have 4 copies of Roxie, definitely our favorite draw supporter in the deck. We discard up to 2 Pokemon from our hand, executing GX and EX, and we draw 3 cards for each we discard. So not only is this great at pitching away our Mad Partiers to fuel our attacks, but also we can discard those Weezings too, like I mentioned, and that way we can get some spread damage on the field that way. So just the hard draw 6 is super good, and we play so many Pokemon, like we play I think 27, 28 Pokemon, something in that range. We almost always have 2 different Pokemon in our hand to be able to use with Roxie. So Roxie is basically always a live card, and we don't have to discard our entire hand like we do with something like Professor's Research. But with that being said, though, we are still playing 2 copies of Professor's Research in the deck. You know, Research just still has a ton of synergy with our core strategy here. Just discard our hand, draw 7. But again, we sort of want to fall back on Roxie just because we don't have to get rid of our whole hand, and we can basically almost always make use of the card. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of Marnie. So Marnie, even though it's not a discarding effect, it's still nice because it gives us a little bit of disruption here. Both players put their hands at the bottom of their deck. You get 5, your opponent gets 4. So just a nice little bit of disruption. Sometimes you don't have a hand that you want to discard, or you don't want to discard Pokemon in, so Marnie can sometimes be a little bit better in those situations. And then to round out our supporters, of course, we have 2 copies of Boss's Orders just to choose what we want to take knockouts on. So pretty straightforward supporter count there. Going on to our item cards, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball. So Quick Ball, great card in this deck. I mean, most decks love Quick Ball to begin with, but we really do because it's one of the ways we can actually discard things from our hand. So we discard a card from our hand, then search our deck for a Pokemon, or basic Pokemon, I should say, put it into our hand. Up next from there, we have 4 copies of Great Ball. So Great Ball, it's another ball card. You look at the top 7 cards of your deck, pick a Pokemon you find there, put it into your hand. I love Great Ball in this deck just because we play almost 30 Pokemon, so you almost always have multiple different options when using Great Ball. We have a lot of Pokemon we need to get into the discard pretty quickly, so we need a bunch of ways at searching them out. Up next from there, though, we have 4 copies of Pokemon Communication as well, so plenty of Pokemon Search in this deck. So Communication is kind of nice just because it's basically almost always a live card. The issue with Communication usually is that it's a bit weaker in decks that play a low amount of Pokemon, just because you don't always have a Pokemon in your hand to put back in your deck. But again, with a deck like this, that's like almost never the case, meaning Pokemon Communication effectively reads search your deck for any Pokemon, since you'll almost always have one in your hand to use with it. So one of the things you might notice is the lack of the new Familiar Bell or Lookalike Bell, whatever it's going to end up being called. Just because I think it's a little bit awkward if you draw into it in the early game. And, you know, I think our searching options are already good enough. I'm not sure if lookalike bells needed. I think if I did include that, I would maybe play it as like a 2 count, probably no more though. So feel free to explore with that as well. I mean, that's definitely, I think, a card a lot of people are going to look to include. But overall, I've really been enjoying the searching options that we have so far. But I do want to throw that out there because I do know that is a card people are thinking about too. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of U-Turn Board. Really happy to be able to use U-Turn Board in this deck. Everything has a 1 retreat cost, so there's no need to run something like Air Balloon. And U-Turn Board, whenever it gets discarded from play, it comes back to your hand. And of course, it reduces your retreat cost by exactly 1. So really nice. I don't expect Absol to be a big card in the post-rotation format, so U-Turn Board is almost always going to be sort of a live effect. You're not really going to have to worry about your retreat cost being affected by much. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Great Catcher. So Great Catcher, I do like, even though I think a lot of my post-rotation lists have been skimping on Great Catcher, I do still like it in this deck specifically because it is another way we can discard our Mad Party Pokemon. So of course we discard 2 cards from our hand and switch our opponent's act with one of their bench Pokemon GX or EX. So most notably for the post-rotation format, it's a way to bring up the Denes, and hitting 160 is actually a pretty easy number for the Mad Party deck. So Great Catcher is like almost always going to get you a knockout whenever you have it in your hand. So that's why I'm playing this over the 3rd Boss's Orders. Then up next from there, we have 1 copy of Ordinary Rod as well. That's going to be a form of recovery. We can get 2 Pokemon back into our deck. We play no basic energies. So the main reason we're playing this is for wheezing, and also sometimes if maybe you had to overextend a little bit in certain situations and discard a bunch of Mad Party Pokemon, maybe not some of the ones you wanted, you can maybe use Ordinary Rod to get them back. I've kind of had that happen a few times where it's like, I really need to get this knockout, but in order to do that, I need to discard maybe more Bunnelbys than I would really feel comfortable with to get the knockout on this turn. So I'll use Ordinary Rod maybe later in the game to get some of those back after I've put some of my other Mad Partiers in the discard, but also to get Weezings back. That's I think more of the more pressing thing, because basically you can discard up to 8 Weezings in a game with 4 Roxies. So Ordinary Rod's going to give you effectively 6 if you do choose to. I think this is probably one of the more cuttable cards though, just because, I mean, you want stuff in the discard already. So if there are certain cards you're looking to make room for, this is one of the ones that I'd be eyeing down first if I was going to cut anything. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Chaotic Swell. That is going to be our stadium card of choice here. There's really not many stadiums I really want with this deck. I think you could play maybe even something like Spike Myth if you really want to, just to cheat some additional damage counters into play. But Chaotic Swell seems fine. We don't really need to run a high count of it. 1's going to be enough to maybe keep some of those disruptive stadiums out of play, especially now that things like Black Market Prism Star might become a little bit more popular with the Eternatus on the rise. Being able to have an answer to something like that is definitely going to be good. But it's just a generic counter stadium and seems to get the job done. Up next from there, though, we have 4 copies of Twin Energy in the deck. Of course, because this can only be attached to our... Well, actually, it can be attached to GXs, but it only provides 1 colorless. But when it's attached to a non-V or GX, it provides 2. So, of course, that's going to power up our Polteageist and our Bunnelby. But then we still do run 2 copies of the Triple Acceleration Energy as well to round out our special energy line. Just because... we need more than 4 of these in a game to win. So I think there is consideration for playing 3. I did have 3 in my list at one point. Ideally, you're only going to, especially in a format with like 2 and 3 prize Pokemon, hopefully you're not going to have to actually attack 6 times to win. So 6 seems to be fine. I wouldn't go lower, that's for sure. But you could opt for a 3rd Triple Acceleration Energy if you are like kind of stressed about that. But with that being said, guys, that is going to be our draft here of the Mad Party deck. Looking back at Night March, I don't think Mad Party quite lives up to the insane legacy of Night March. But to be fair, if you guys look back at Night March was actually kind of a meme deck. It was kind of a bad deck when it first came out, and it really didn't become actually very viable until several sets later. So Mad Party, I mean, it definitely has the core of what it needs to survive, even in the post-rotation format, as you guys can see. So maybe as time goes on, this will become an even more dominant archetype over time. But nevertheless, it's a strong 1-prize deck, hits some insane numbers, especially in the late game. But you do need a good bit of Pokemon in the discard pile, and it caps out at usually around 280, 300 damage is sort of kind of my average with the deck. So that is a little bit short of taking those big 3 prize 1-hit KOs, but again, we have the Wheezing. That's going to help us get there ideally. But with that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy this look at the Mad Party deck. We have plenty more Darkness Ablaze coverage coming up over the next several weeks. Definitely like, subscribe, and sound off below in the comment section what you think about this deck. And if you can, consider supporting this channel as well by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store, rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.